Success Stories. I'm Steve and Jarrett from JSCareers, and we're here to spotlight real job seekers who've walked through layoffs, life changes, and really truly doubt. And they've made it to the other side. They've successfully navigated this difficult time in their life, and they've come out not just as a success story, but as a true impact player as they move into their next segment of their career. At JSC, our mission is pretty simple. We want to help job seekers build a system and not just land a job, but land the right job. And we do that through clarity, confidence, and having a community that's all surrounded around them so they feel that empowerment, and they can come out with the direction of knowing that they're better off because of a hard situation, right? Your story doesn't end with a rejection or a layoff. It's really just the middle part of a much greater, more grand journey that every single person is on. And so today, a very special guest, someone that I have known since 2016. We actually worked together back in the Verizon days, and I'm very excited to, of course, have Jared with us. His story is about, yes, a difficult concept of losing everything at once. And it's what so many of the individuals inside of our community feel. And they've even expressed in the last week, they've lost their job, they've lost a relationship, they've lost their company. And ultimately for Jared, he's lost a sense of his own direction. And using the structure, his amazing resilient mindset, and then the community to come behind him to kind of really help him have that guidance is truly what's helped him land what he calls his dream role. And I'm going to spend a minute to brag on Jared because I think I have an intimate relationship with Jared from the past with Verizon, so I can share a little bit more. And when I first had an opportunity to meet with Jared, he was coming into a world where he's out of school, he's navigating where he wants to be, he has huge dreams for himself, and he was an individual from the moment that I had a chance to interview with him. And I knew there was a spark that was different in him than others. And you could see that from an early stage. And this is something that I want to encourage everybody, that if you're an individual who's ever had someone tell you that spark doesn't go away. And so Jared not only took the opportunity at Verizon and became one of the top overall sellers inside of our district, not only just his store, but then he led, of course, and went on to be able to become one of the top overall sales individuals inside of the company. That motivation, that drive didn't stop. He always knew he was going to do something much greater and much more grand. He'll tell you a little bit more about his story. I won't steal all of his thunder. But he's an individual that if you ever have a chance to really lean into him and meet with him, and I suggest you do reach out, whether that's through LinkedIn or even in our community and Discord, have a conversation with Jared. You'll be better for it because he's a person who never stops fighting. And so with all that being said, Jared, I'm extremely excited to have you. So I know I've said a lot, but give us a quick version of who you are and what are you currently doing now?
Yeah, excited to be here, Stephen. Thanks for having me. So I'm 31 years old. I am just got a job with Siemens Energy, actually doing being a global logistics network and warehouse manager. So warehousing and supply chain is kind of something I've been in for the last 5-6 years now. It's something that I've always kind of, I don't know, I guess sort of been in my blood. My dad was in manufacturing for 30 some years. So it's just something that I've always kind of loved to do. And it's actually given me the opportunity to travel, which is, I love, hands down, my favorite thing to do is travel. I feel more motivated when I travel. I feel more, I don't know, alive because I'm meeting new people and seeing new cultures and seeing how people are in different states, countries, whatever it may be. So, yeah, excited to get started with this new role, and hopefully starting on the December 1st, I think is my first start date. So yeah, looking forward to it and excited to begin this new journey. I was with the company for 5 years, so it's kind of hard to, you feel like you lose your sense of pride and whatnot when you are laid off from a company. But we'll get into that later.
No, but I think that's an excellent statement because your career path is interesting for multiple different reasons. But I think what you said there about your sense of pride, and that's because when I think about the fact of your career path leading you from Verizon to studying criminal justice and navigating through that while you're even working a full-time job that's demanding, because you had a boss who was just a jerk. I mean, what a jerk, demanding so much of you at your time at Verizon. But then obviously then you took all that experience and moved into Lloyd. So walk us through that journey a little bit so that the listeners can understand not just a little bit more of who you are, but really kind of what your thought process was, because you had a plan and you were executing that plan during difficult times. And a lot of us feel that way, whether we're a pivoter right now or, man, maybe we're laid off and life is on us, right? And the heaviness of that, you have to stay with that vision. So talk about a little bit about that direction for yourself.
Yeah. I started, out of high school, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to go into criminal justice field and do police work or do clandestine work for the government and get into that secretive spy work kind of deal. And, I even took Russian in college, was thinking, oh, I want to study a second language and, I would fit in well over there, whatnot. But, I got the degree, got out of school and unfortunately, it was at a time where I had to actually have jaw surgery done because I had an underbite. So I had to wait like 6 months before even getting a job because I couldn't work anywhere. And then, so I landed at Verizon and Verizon took me on this path that for, 2 years, I did work for a jerk a little bit, but he was fun in other ways. Kidding. But it was a good time and I learned a lot about myself and gained confidence, more confidence than I had before, because you're in front of people a lot. And during that time, I was getting my clearance through the government because again, I wanted to go into the criminal justice world. I had that degree, and right before I left, I was actually offered a manager position or a SME position with Apple, and I turned it down because I was like, you know what, this was my dream. I got to chase this dream and see where it takes me. And I can always maybe end up back at Verizon later if I want to. But so I took that and ran with it for a few months and then realized, you know what, I did not like it and just went back to the business world. And about 2 years later, after I worked for Charter for a few months, and then I worked for a company called GDIT for a few months, because at that point I did have my clearance and was kind of in that world of government and cleared work that I landed a job at Deloitte and I thought, well, that was my dream job. I was doing consulting work for government clients and military clients, and then also commercial clients. For 5 years, I did that, and it was going well. And then, there has been some government blame on it just because of the layoffs and whatnot that have happened, and that's happened with everybody. But in July, that's kind of where it took me down a little bit. But I loved the consulting life. I loved the success and the confidence I was having with the clients. I felt like it was just something that I was meant to do, and I was like, I'm never going to leave consulting. This is it for me. And then, life. I'm a big believer and big faith guy, and you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
No, I think I love that. I love that. It's true. And I think we do that whether it's a religious context or just in life in general, right? And depending on how your faith lies, you can always have the direction inside of that, or even try and veer against it, right? And it's funny how the universe or God Himself will steer you back one way or the other, right? And,
Right.
And I do love the joke that you have there, where we really truly realize that we're going on this journey, and this journey of life that we have is one where we think we have a top of the world type of feeling, right? And I know you've shared that, and I think that was your moment that you were just describing. And so if you want to give me a sense for all those individuals, and we'll move on from this fairly quickly, because but I want folks to hear this. You're an individual who pivoted fast. And I think you just like you said, where you wanted to be in criminal justice, and then the jaw situation happens, you pivoted. You took advantage of the opportunity you had at Verizon. From there, you took all that knowledge, all that expertise, all that learning, and then you realized real quickly, ooh, I can still get a piece of this. I'm going to pivot this direction, right? And you did that multiple times and you found this top of the world moment. How do you see that top of the world moment now for yourself compared to what you might have thought you had when you were with Deloitte?
Um, I see it as just another stepping stone because I I think there's lots of times where we have this top of the world moment in our lives, and I think that sometimes we can be humbled real quick, and I think that was it for me. I think there was some things that were happening where it just felt comfortable, right? Like I was top of the world and it was comfortable. And I think it was good for me because it allowed me to the job itself was good for me. The success, the top of the world moment was good for me because it allowed me to meet a bunch of people. But I think which, we'll get into, me getting laid off from that and going downhill was humbling because I got so comfortable with it, and it was time for me to, all right, take a step back and like go challenge yourself again. And I think that was the big thing for me between criminal justice to Verizon to Deloitte, changing career paths was it was a challenge at times because I had to make a job on a resume. I had to kind of tailor it to the job I wanted. And not to say you can't I mean, you can do that with anything you want. I feel like, you get a great resume writer or someone to help you out, and you can tailor a job that you're doing now into something that you really want to do. And I think that was a key thing for me is being able to tailor it that way because you wanted to show that you were expandable. I wanted to show that I could do this even though I had experience in that. And that's the thing about college, I think is the biggest kind of thing is getting a job after college is you don't really have the world experience, and so when you're applying to jobs, the people that are reviewing your resume see that you don't have that world experience. So how do you tailor yourself into that job application from just having a college degree or just learning in general? So yeah, we'll get into all the nitty gritty later, but I think it humbled me real quick.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good segment because I think your story of really refining and what you're saying there, what I'm hearing is like the storytelling aspect, right? Like understanding how important those marketing materials are when it comes to a job seeker, and it's sometimes really hard to do that when you go through, a layoff. Now, for your case, what I think shows your resiliency is the fact, Jared, that you had a double hit. I mean, you took this conversation that's hard enough to break one person from losing their job, but you also then lost a long-term relationship that you thought was really moving in the right direction. So I don't want to make this too emotional, but I do want everyone to understand that your resiliency was not just one of a pain of, say, income loss or insecurity in that way. It was a pretty emotional time for you in both walks, personal and business. So can you walk us all through or kind of speak to a little bit about how everything hit at once, how you had the job loss, you had the end of engagement, and what was that season like for you as you can think back at those moments?
Yeah, yeah. So back to the top of the world moment, right? I was engaged. I was paying for a wedding. I was ready to go. If had a fiance, had the best job in the world, I felt like, and then July hits, and yeah, found out, and I'll be blunt. I found out she was cheating on me, so that hit hard, along with a lot of other things that I found out, and then um, I lost my job. So I didn't necessarily get fired. I got laid off, so it sort of felt a little bit less of a hit in that way. But at the same time, it wasn't the right time. I felt like to lose. It's never really a good time to lose a job, but it was definitely not a good time to lose a job at that point because you know um, it I was going to be alone, just in every aspect of life. I was going to be living alone. I was going to be, you know, figuring out what to do for a job, full-time job. And I was going to be, I didn't necessarily have any friends where I was living at. So I didn't have that sense of community either. And so it just, I didn't feel like I had any clue what I wanted to do. I was coming up with these absurd, kind of dreams, ideas that I had in my mind of thinking, man, if what if this, or what if that, or maybe I should do this, or maybe I should move to another country or whatever. I mean, it was just all these different feelings that I had. And I think that's what happens when you hit rock bottom. You just stop caring and you're like, you know what? I don't know where I want to go. I don't know what I want to do. But I think at that same point in time, you stop caring and you're like, it's going to be a fresh start somewhere, wherever I go. And I just got to take this first step. And I think that was the biggest thing, was like, I'm at rock bottom. There's nowhere to go except up. I can't go any deeper than this. Like this isn't the only thing that I feel like would go deeper than this is maybe death. Right. So, because it was that hard. So I just started sort of reaching back out to people that I felt like I could connect with. And that's when you and I, were able to connect. And, I'll get into the routine and whatnot a little bit later, but I think it was just more so a sense of like, there's nowhere else to go. So might as well just start trying and going up, or at least maybe go sideways a little bit, or maybe a little diagonal, right? Like, what are going to be some things that I can do to sort of put me in the direction to going back up. So
Hmm. Yeah, I think through that moment that we hopped on that phone, and it's always amazing to me, since jumping into this world of meeting job seekers, is you always join those calls, and there's little questions that we ask of what we're going to talk about. And I think that the number one thing that I've learned is that there's so much more to every person than whatever is placed on a piece of paper, whether that's a resume, whether that's a informational form filled out. And even if you've known someone for a decade, you never know what someone's going through until you ask them. And if you can't ask with intention, and you can't ask with an open heart to find that, what we like to teach you, the value creation moments, you'll never really understand what someone's going through, and also the fight that they're putting in to get out of it. And I think that's the point that I want to lean into next is, when we were on the phone, I love you're talking about rock bottom. I think you used bottom of the barrel was one of the terms that you used.
yeah.
So both of them are excellent terms. But it made me kind of think more about, what was that turning point for you? When did you make this decision that we'll go with the rock bottom, that you were going to climb out of this hole that you were in? And what did that look like? I know you mentioned about just some movement, but maybe give us a little bit more depth there to that.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a sense of, I know I'm better than this, right? Like, I know I can be better than this. This isn't me. Like, I've been through. I've never really had been through a layoff before, but I've taken honestly, with Verizon, right? Like, when I transitioned from Verizon into the government, I actually left Verizon before I had the job officially with the government. What happened was, I thought I had it. The clearance didn't come through. So here I was moving back home with my parents for 2 months before I actually went up to take the job, and thinking, maybe this won't ever come through. Maybe this won't ever come through. And it was just a sense of, you know what? No, it's supposed to happen. Like, this is where I'm supposed to go. This is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what kind of, I can't really tell you what gives you that feeling. It's just when it happens, it happens, like, and you realize it, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna get myself out of this. But it was a sense of, even connecting with you, connecting with my friends, right? Like we didn't necessarily connect first with a forum and all that stuff. It was more so I think I saw you on LinkedIn, connected, and we followed each other. And then all of a sudden, you were sending me a message, said, "Hey, man, hope you're doing well." And I said, at that point in time, again, I think things happen for a reason, right? And at that point, I was like, I need to connect back up with Steven. Like, I started looking at your profile, started looking at what you were doing, JSC careers, and was like, you know what, I need to talk to Steven. Like he's gotta know what's going on and maybe he can help me out. And I think that was it too, was I knew there was a lot of people that I had on my, on my shoulders, on my arms, like that were able to walk with me, holding my hand, able to walk with me a little bit, because that's always been my thing in my life, is keeping a close connection to people that I like, the people that I love, the people that have been with me through difficult times, and when you are in those difficult times, those are the people you can rely on the most. So it was a sense of just knowing that I had people out there that cared about me, and I knew I was going to make it through because of them.
Hmm. Well, one, I'm humbled you would say that, and I do remember. The interesting thing is there was no sales intention. The conversation was really, it was so funny. And then of course you joined our program, and maybe it's kind of my fault in general, right? I'm not it's fun. Led sales my entire life, and yeah.
I actually remember asking you, I said, you know, I see that you're doing this. Tell me about it,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I need to get into something, right? Like let me let me make the sale easy for you, Steven. Like,
Yeah,
tell me about
just
it.
tell me, give me, yeah. I think that's the fun part about what JS Careers is all about, right? It's that sense of, we're not out here to sell you everything, but we are here to help you through everything, right? And the idea here, the truth is everybody has to navigate that path together. And I think when we were talking, I was so sucked into your story, and I was so involved with this amazing human being who is so disciplined. And that's truly who and what you're known for. I mean, from the moment that even that spark, this was an individual who understood how to take direct action to create great moments. And that's something that you did so well. So, as you were going through this process, I think I want us to talk about that, because we need systems and routines inside of our lives, and job seekers particularly need that, right? And in a time where we see a lot of individuals picking up part-time work and still trying to navigate through the job market, or maybe they're trying to find that part-time work, but yet they still need to find a full-time job. There's a lot of pushes and pulls that happens in people's routines. So, as an individual who, again, foundationally is a disciplined person, I think that's something I think every individual listening to this as a job seeker would want to know. And so can you describe kind of what that looked like for you, especially as you were working those nights and still job seeking, and how did you make that work from a day-to-day routine?
Yeah. So thankfully, I because of the clearance that I had, I was able to find kind of a part-time gig, which I was actually working a little bit. I kind of had two jobs while I had my full-time job until I got laid off. And so this part-time job sort of became my full-time job, and no benefits, no salary, anything like that, just kind of an hourly job. But I was like, I got to do something, got to do something to stay busy, going through what I'm going, like keep my mind off the personal stuff, but also make money and try to continue to help live. So I will say I'm blessed in that sense, of because not a lot of people have that, not a lot of people have a job they can kind of, like a part-time job they can rely on while they're searching for the full-time job. But um that wasn't the job I wanted, and it was just something to keep me busy. And I was wanting to get back into what I was doing, not necessarily maybe consulting, but something around the same career field, or field that I was doing consulting work for. And so while I was working these nights at this job, there was 4 hours on a 12-hour shift. There was 4 hours in the night where I was behind the computer, and I I just had a routine every night of just going in there, looking at job descriptions, seeing which ones kind of aligned to me, um, making sure my resume was, correct and up to date. And gosh, when you start applying to jobs, especially the many that I did, um, there's some of these companies that you might have applied to 3 years ago. And so you go on there and your resume is still on there from 3 years ago, and you're having to make sure that it's updated, because if you're not, you're sending them a resume from 2021 when really you've got way more experience and stuff now from 2025. And so, it was like there were a couple jobs I think I applied to that I sent them my old resume, and I'm like, well, that wasn't really good strategically. Like, I need to kind of make sure I do this slowly. So at one point, I was kind of just sitting there applying to a lot, and then I started, you know what, I need to apply to things that are more so related to what I want to do, right? And actually, I can still apply to a lot of jobs, but I need to have a strategic mindset of applying to things that really fit what I want to do. And you know, whether that be the role, whether that be the location, I think location's key on, where you want to live, and which job you want to apply for. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but I think just having a mindset to, when you get the denials and whatnot, to just stay disciplined and keep applying the same routine. And maybe that routine, maybe something doesn't work out and you switch things up, but you just stay disciplined, you stay focused on the goal. And the end goal for me was to find a job that I really, loved and wanted to get into. And I think that's what I've done.
Yeah, and what I think is great is you took several of the concepts from our calls that we discuss, and even some of the trainings, and I love how you molded and shifted them to what you need, which is a key foundational principle of what JSC really wants every one of their members to do. We don't believe that there's one strategy that necessarily is perfect for all parties. That's not the case. This is the reason why it's actually all of our foundational teaching is agnostic to that, because we understand that that's not the focus for everyone. Your intentions of needing to get back to the Carolinas was very different than, say, some other members who want to stay in their existing routine. They've got kids anchored in situations, things of that nature. So as a job seeker in itself, what's important is finding that, and I'm going to use the word clarity in your search is the correct way. You did that. I know at one point we were on the phone and you mentioned like you applied to thousands of jobs. And I know that, of course, you did not apply to thousands of jobs. You might have applied to hundreds of jobs, like a lot of job seekers. But the transition and the shift there, and you said it, you sort of touched on it, is just you really started to strategically shift the way that you were thinking about your applications. That doesn't mean that you didn't take advantage of that time that you had late at night when you were working, right? In those downtimes, you did that, and you had a system, and you tracked those jobs, and you followed up very well with those companies, and you built relationships within those companies too. So I want to give you a lot of credit for that. And I think the key takeaway that I want to share, and you can fill in anything else after this, is because this is important, is you had a system that you tweaked and you adjusted, but you never abandoned it. You just took all of your strengths that you had about the discipline you had, the time frames that you had. You took great concepts that were shared with other people, and you built it around what worked best for you. And most people fail because they don't build repeatable habits. They don't have the ability necessarily to always take chaos and unfortunate events and then turn it into a process for success. Do you want to add anything to that for job seekers? Because I think that's something that's so amazing about what you did and how you did it. But do you want to add anything extra?
I mean, I think, I've lost my train of thought here. Wow, we were talking about this and it actually happened. um, yeah, I mean, I think just, when you're looking, I think your personal life, right? Like keeping a community, whether it's talking to friends on a daily basis, when it's applying to jobs, I had a routine every day when it came to any of that. And it sounds crazy, but I would call the same friends kind of each day and sort of have a conversation with them, talk to them about what they're into, what are they doing, and if I couldn't reach them, and maybe we connect the next day. And same thing came with the jobs. I would apply. If I heard back from a recruiter, I would do the follow up. I think that's key, is just making sure you stay focused on the goal, keeps you focused on what your disciplines are to get to that goal. So that would be something that I would say is that I'll add is your focus on your the main goal. If you don't focus on the little things to get you that goal, you may not get there, because you need to make those little things matter, those little goals matter, to get to the bigger goal in the end.
Yeah, and I think that's the holding that clarity is what I'm hearing you say there, and holding true to that work. And I and I think you touched on the personal side too. And you made a powerful statement to me, and I wrote it down actually, and I've kept it, and I think it's something that everybody should hear, which is your career strategy is a life strategy, and I think there's a lot to that, right? And I slightly touched on the Carolinas, but do you want to share a little bit more about how all of that fit for you, and why that was so important to you to keep that direction on an understanding of career strategy is life strategy?
Yeah. So I think for me it was, again, bottom of the barrel, and I was like, I have no one here. In order for me to have a successful career and get back into kind of wanting, doing what I love, I think mental health was a big thing for me, and that was being around people that cared about me, loved me, friends that I could hang out with outside of work. And so for me, it was location. I think location's big when it comes to finding what you want to do. Um, and so I started looking back into Charlotte, back into my hometown, and thinking, you know what, this is where I want to end up. I have all my family's here, immediate family's here, all my friends that I still talk to this day, that I'm on phone calls with every day living in Virginia. You know, that's kind of who I want to be around, where I want to go. So that was it for me. Because I could have gone pretty much anywhere with the jobs that I was looking for, the things that I was wanting to get into. There was even a moment there I thought about going out to Colorado and just starting fresh. No friends, no family, nothing. But I said, you know what, that didn't work for me here, because I had well, now ex fiance, but I had someone close, but I didn't have anybody outside of that. And so I said, that didn't work. Now I need to actually go back and location needs to matter. Like where I'm at, who I'm surrounded by, that needs to matter. And I think having a support system outside of, you can have a support system in work, because I had that too at Deloitte. Deloitte was really great about that. I'll say that. You have a support system when it comes to your general work, but when it comes to a support system outside of work, and they can talk to you about your personal things, I think that's what matters the most. And life balance, right? Companies talk about it all the time. You got to balance work-life balance, and so I think that was big for me, was finding out where I wanted to live, with a myself, and then maybe a future family, and then being around my current family now, and current friends. So the location is huge. Even if you, like, let's say you're not super close to your family and friends, where do you want to live? Do you want to be in the city? Do you want to be in the country? What do you want to do outside of work? I think that's where you look at what you look at the most, because you don't want to work just your whole life. You want to have that balance. You want to be able to work and use the money that you make at that job to do the fun things that make you happy, and make you live your best life. So that's it for me, is location.
Well, I think that's great, and I'm going to tie a couple points together here, because I think it would be great for job seekers to really hear this section of it, right? Which is the idea, like, if you're out there just spraying and praying out applications and just throwing things out there without some form of strategical thought, the problem with that is you also lose confidence, and you lose the rational reasoning. When you get some of those questions that should be very basic, simple questions in an interview that will throw you off, which is, well, why did you pick this job, or why did you apply? If you don't have a reason for that, if there's not a rational conversation that ties back both aspects of professionalism as well as your personal life, it can fall very flat in those answers, and that hurts that hurts your percentage chance of not only getting to the next round, but it can sometimes decimate your ability to build a relationship with that person you're interviewing with. So there's even a systematic reason why, and a higher percentage chance of success when you do that. And the other piece of this is, and I think Mel Robbins says this the best, and we use this quote actually in one of our trainings, which is the idea that, no one's coming to save you, but everyone's there to support you, or everyone can support you, right? And I think there's a key component of that is you have to save yourself, but the idea here is you have to then use the word can here and understand that everyone can support you, but you got to have it. You got to foster it. You got to build it, which I think is what you did so well. I think your recognition of that, of then finding the right people to get around you to support you. And that's really where we created the idea of the community, right? Not everybody has that same level of family, the same level of friends that can kind of wrap their arms around you and give you that. And so I know that was a huge component for you that helped fuel you. And I obviously, I know there's moments in the community where individuals helped you, and we can get into that a little bit later. But I want to make a transition here because I think this is a good moment to do this, and because it's still fitting in the world, the idea of community help. But you talked a lot about leaning into your network, right? And about reconnecting with old colleagues and mentors. And the key here where this filters so well is the idea that I hear you talking about is that you took back the power of asking for help and being okay with getting that help. So tell me a little bit more about that, and what did that really look for you, and where did that lead you?
Yeah, and you bring up Mel Robbins. I love one of her phrases. It's let them, let them think this about you, let them think that about you. And that's kind of what happened here, right? I reached out to people that honestly I probably didn't have any business reaching out to for. I reached out to people, Deloitte managing directors and partners who, have 30 years of experience, and they're going, I can't necessarily help you out, but whatever. And so they may have thought that about me, right? Like they may have been like, oh, well, I don't know why he's reaching out to me. But again, let them think that, because at the end of the day, you're doing what you think is best for you. So I was reaching out to everybody. I'm actually meeting with my old coach mentor next week before I leave Virginia, because once I put on my LinkedIn that I found a new job, he was like, hey man, congrats. And I was like, hey, let's meet for a drink and talk about it. And we're going to end up in the same career field later down the line, because we might end up seeing each other at a conference, because he's working in warehousing and I'll be in warehousing. So but we had a great relationship regardless. So but even before when I got laid off, I reached out to him and said, hey, can I use you guys as a reference? And he was like, absolutely. So using your network, using the people that you worked closely with, and maybe even like I even connected with a colleague that we butted heads quite a bit on a lot of issues when we worked in person, at some sites, and but the funny thing was we got laid off at the same time, and I even connected with him. We weren't so great on a personal level. We butted heads quite a bit, but we got him and said, hey man, we're kind of both in this together. Let me know if I can help you out. And he said the same thing. And that was it. So, you know, whatever insight I was gaining, whether that was informational from colleagues or insights from friends and family when it came to personal stuff, I was using my network as much as possible to make myself stronger, building myself up. It was like, going to the gym, right? I think having those conversations was like going to the gym and working out and building yourself up stronger physically. I think mentally it was building myself up stronger by having those conversations and just having those chats with the numerous people that I did.
I love that, and I think the key there is let them. And you can. I like the context you took, and let them think whatever you think. But that allows you to give you the freedom to trust and even put yourself out there. And I think one of the great examples of that was your experience with Pete from inside of the community, right? And
Yeah.
that took some trust, right? That took a little
Yeah.
bit of, I mean, you're just going off of like a recommendation of, hey, you should talk to this guy, and then here's this. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about that experience, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I think we were on the Friday Q&A call, if I remember correctly, and this was at a time when So I had just gotten the news that I was getting a third interview, and it was an assessment. And I told Pete and yourself, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I've done 3 panel interviews before. I've had 6 interviews for one company. I've done all this type of stuff, but I've never had an assessment where they're actually asking me to build something out and do the job before I actually do the job. So I'm nervous. I'm kind of going back and forth. What do I do? What do I do? And Pete, was able to be like, hey, I built out a PowerPoint. I'll help you out this way. Let me know if there's anything I can do. He was super helpful. And I think that's one of the great things about this community is you don't know people from Adam and they're willing to help you out because they're in the same boat. They want to help you, and maybe if they help you and you land something, you can help them out. Right. Piggyback off of each other. And so that's what Pete did. I built out the PowerPoint that I needed for the assessment, and I shot it over to him, said, hey, can you take a quick look at it? And he reviewed it. And what I ended up using, he made some edits to it. I ended up using his version and making some more edits and going from there. And it was a success. It landed me the job. So again, big shout out to Pete for helping me out. I hope I can maybe help him out in the future, but we'll see what happens. I think that's the biggest thing about, I think this community, the JSCareers, I think the biggest thing about it is you connect with people that you've never met, and they're all in the same boat with you. And that's your community if you don't even have one yourself. Like, say you don't have a personal community at home or real close friends or family, like this gives you that. So I think that's a huge thing about this.
And I think what's really great is you mentioned the idea of utilizing friends, family, community, coworkers, colleagues, alumni from your school, all of these great avenues to find support. And you did this, and I want to call this out because you deserve this recognition, right? You landed this role after being laid off in July, and you had your offer closed and done by October, right? So you're one of those incredible stories that we're blessed to have inside of our world where you landed that within that 3-month window, right? And obviously it all worked out, it all paid through, and there was different aspects. You were doing work beforehand, you did some work inside, and you are the incredible proof that when you take action and put structure around it, you can build a system that will allow for execution. It wasn't luck, right? It wasn't anything of that necessary that just fell into your lap, right? You had to trust, you had to allow, you had to do all those things that are really difficult, right? And I think what I hear when you talk about describing that presentation and allowing Pete to step in, is this is someone you never met, that you let changes would change things and put his own thoughts, his own concepts, and clean it up and put it out there. And then you put your own spin back on it with your edits, but you still have to trust the foundation that this person knew what they were doing. And I think that's absolutely incredible. And so a tip of the cap to you for that. Obviously appreciate all the kind words about the community, and you're right. That's what we see every single day. We have some tough conversations that happen in that community, and people share a lot. The Mindset Channel is a good example of that. And the idea there is that, we're going to pick you up and celebrate your wins, but we're also going to be there when you're hurting. And that's something that's super important. So I appreciate you not just making that call out, but taking advantage of that too, Jared. It was really cool to see you be able to do that with Pete. So let me switch, because I think you have such good advice for job seekers, and I want to make sure we really lean into this section here and spend a little bit of time. So for anyone who is a job seeker that's listening right now and feels like you did, where you feel stuck or defeated, what's that advice for them? Like, what would you give them to say, go do this?
Routines. Routines are key. Staying grounded in the routine. Like I said before, if that routine may not be working out for you, maybe you need to try something different, but get in a routine. When you're working, if you were working and you had a normal job, you'd have a routine. You get up in the morning, you'd have breakfast, you'd maybe go to the gym or whatever, and then you head on to work. You'd have a routine. So treat it like a job. I think that's the biggest thing is and that's something I was told to actually by my own dad was, treat interviewing, treat applying to a job like you have a job. That's your job. It's defined work. Do your research, right? You got to do research at work, do your research on companies, do your research on jobs. And I honestly didn't know much about Siemens Energy, before I got the job. But I did a little bit of research, got the basics, went on to the website, and I think the assessment they made me do helped me out a little bit more in that, because I learned so much more about the company. But yeah, I think routines are big. I think when you get a rejection, like I got tons of them. I have some of the emails saved just because I use them as motivation. But I think that was the thing, was when you got rejected, I didn't necessarily let it get me down. It was just like, you know what, not meant for me, on to something else. And that's kind of how you have to take it. Is, again, I'm a huge believer, and faith is a big thing. And I think I'm going to end up where I am supposed to end up and where I need to be. And I think there's a bigger plan out there, whether that's the universe or God or whoever you believe in, whatever God you believe in, right? I think he, they, whoever knows where you need to be, and knows where you're going to be. And if you get rejected, you get rejected. So you move on, make it a motivating thing for you to find something else. Or maybe you end up like me. I had three not offers, but 3 interviews at the same time. Well, same week. And one was Siemens, one was another company, and another one I was on the verge of having an interview. Well, I interviewed with the other company, and never heard back from them. I interviewed, I sent the follow-up, I did the 369 rule. I believe that's right. Am I saying that right? I did the 369 rule, followed up, and I did the same thing with both companies, and heard back from Siemens, didn't hear back from the other company. And again, you do those things, you do the routines, something will stick. At some point, something will stick, and just stay consistent with what you're doing. Just like anything else, if you stop working out, you're gonna not meet your goal, right? For your physical appearance, right? If you stop working out, you got to stay consistent in the gym. You got to stay consistent. You got to stay disciplined, eat healthy, whatever it may be. If you want to get a belly, you got to consistently drink beer. Whatever you want to do, you gotta keep that consistent, mindset, and not let the rejections get the best of you. And I think routines help with that mindset of rejection. Is, all right, I'm just gonna do it again. I'm just gonna do it again. I'm just gonna keep doing it. Something's gonna hit. And also take risks. This is I don't think I told you this, but I was working in Virginia, another part of Virginia, had this interview assessment at 9 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, which early for an interview, but I was interviewing with people in another country. So it was different, in their world. And I left the job that I was working night shift from, I worked from 6 to 6 a.m. I left the job. I drove 2 hours to my friend's house to use their computer so that I could use my iPad to look at kind of the script and things that I needed to discuss and interview with them. Because I didn't have a laptop, I had a work laptop. So I took that risk of no sleep, going there, drinking some coffee, making sure that I had the setup, making sure that I stayed focused on the end goal, and interviewed, and it went well. And thankfully I had that friend to help me out there. And maybe some of you do, maybe some of you don't, but I'm just saying in the sense of, don't be afraid to take a risk and give it your all when you're interviewing for a job or a role that you want to do. And I can genuinely say I gave it my all, and I ended up landing the job.
It's awesome. That's awesome. And Jared, I can't thank you enough for not just sharing your story, but for truly being an example of resilience. The strategy that you implied, the strength that you displayed for job seekers is unmatched. And I'm so grateful we have this platform and this ability to tell your story, because I think there's so many individuals who are trying to build their comeback story. And for anyone who's truly ready and they want to build a comeback story that's very similar to Jared's, where they are leaning into maybe finding a community, or maybe they have a community but they don't know how to utilize the resources, or they want to build a strategy and they need some support in that. That's really what we've built here with JSCareers. And we want you to be able to join the Discord community. The general chat is free. Anyone can be a part of that. That is, we put that there because we know that there's something so important about just having that community first. And then if you want the additional support, you want to learn some of these tools like the 369 rule, utilizing a 9 to 3 schedule, things of that nature, then please, there's other ways to be able to utilize those teachings, those trainings through our training programs and our courses. But our mission here has been and will always be to help individuals rebuild their confidence, rediscover their true purpose, and then re-enter their professional life equipped to create impactful and real moments, not for survival, but from a renewed direction, discipline, and faith in what's possible for them. I can't express it enough that, Jared, you've been an example of that. I'm so blessed to not just have you inside of our community. That's great. I'm so blessed we reconnected. I'm so happy that we have an opportunity now. We're going to meet in person, right? You're coming down to Charlotte, so we're going to connect on that. And I want to encourage everyone that your story is not finished, and that your story is only going to be told, and it can be told by you and through the help and support of your community. So thank you, Jared, for reminding us of that. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Stephen. Really appreciate it. Happy to share with anybody too.
See, this is what makes this so worth it, guys. That moment, the people that come through this program, they stay in the community. They become alumni inside of our community. And thank you, Jared, for reminding me of that. And so if you guys if you're wanting to connect with any of the alumni, they have a badge inside the Discord that says alumni, and feel free to message them, right? And reach out and hear their story more. Gosh, there's 50 plus individuals that have gone through this program at this point that have found a role, and they've all done it their own unique way. And Jared, thank you again. I really appreciate you. And for anyone who's listening that wants to have an opportunity to be a part of this, you can obviously reach out to us through our LinkedIn page. You can go through our website. Of course, join our free community and have a conversation with us directly. And let's get you going in the right example, in the right direction, and finding clarity in your search. Thank you, everybody.